send in all the questions you want. Let me do one prepared question to start. Looking forward to meeting several of you for the first time, actually, at the seminar in 3 days. Today's Tuesday. Seminar actually starts in 4 days, but we'll meet a number of you on Friday, probably. Here's somebody who says, I have a question. I was talking to a friend this morning. I was telling her about a shift of understanding I'd made. I used to think that when a person got married, they would spend their whole efforts trying to make the other person happy, even if it meant doing things you really didn't want to do. And that's a pretty common misunderstanding. Actually, that's why people get married. I marry you, not so much so that I will make you happy, but I marry you because I'm hoping that you will make me happy. But then, naturally, we settle into a routine where we both convince the other person that it's our job to make the other person happy. So naturally, I married you so that you would make me happy, but eventually you convince me that if I'm doing my job right, I should be making you happy. We both fall into a routine where we come to believe that that's true. Enough experiences happen where if you're not happy, you manage to convince me that it's my fault. And so if I'm a really good partner, then I would be making you happy. Gosh, that's how we come to define being a good partner. If I was really a good partner, then you would be happy because I was making you that way. And I would, if I was a really great partner, then I would always be doing the things that make you happy. Gosh, that's what a really great spouse does, or partner. And that's a myth that is especially perpetuated by really needy spouses and really controlling spouses. If you really are good, then you'll always do what I want. Then she continues. The problem I've discovered with that philosophy is that when you end up with husbands like ours, she was talking to a friend who was also married to a controlling or needy spouse. When you end up with husbands like ours who constantly want you to give up what you want in order to meet their needs, you end up feeling drained, angry, and resentful, and then you wonder why the wheels keep coming off. In other words, why things keep going wrong in the marriage. Because what happens is that if let's say that I'm a really needy, demanding husband, and I'm married to you, and I manage to convince you that in order to be a really good wife, that you should always be doing A through Z. And I'm really good at convincing you of that. And you believe me that in order to be a dutiful wife, you should be doing all of these things. And so you do them all the time. You give up what you want to meet my needs all the time. And you do it. And you successfully manage to meet my needs. But the thing is, you give up what you want to do all the time, and eventually you will come to resent it. And then the times are going to come when you act like a victim. The times are going to come when you will withdraw from me. The times are going to come when you lie to me. The times are going to come when you attack me and criticize me. You will use one or all of the getting behaviors or the protecting behaviors. You're going to get me back, and you will rarely mean to. In fact, most of the time, you won't even realize you're doing it. then when you do attempt to get something for yourself, or you protect yourself, when you retaliate and use those behaviors, I'm not going to like it. And then I'm going to use the same behaviors with you, and within moments, we will have it escalated to where there's an explosion. And we're going to wonder what went wrong. Because up to that point, we had it all worked out where we had an exchange. We had a trade worked out. And when it falls apart, or as she says here, when the wheels come off, boy, they can come off quickly. You take the wheels off a car that seems to be going along smoothly at 80 miles an hour, and it's a pretty screeching sound and feeling. So we're never obligated to be more loving than we're capable of being, and that's the trick. Be as loving as you can be, and then stop. Now, the goal is to push yourself to be as loving as you can be, but not to push yourself to be as loving as your partner tells you you ought to be. What can you do? And then she continues with her friend. To try to do more than we can do can only cripple us. My new understanding is that I was doing that out of fear because I wanted, we'll call her husband Fred, to love me, and I was afraid that he wouldn't if I didn't do all the things he's always planning. He was quite a planner. He was always saying, you ought to be here, you ought to go there, you ought to do this with my family, and that with my family, and that with the community. He was always planning social events for her. And she says, I've realized that only makes me a codependent person, constantly depending on his approval. And yeah, she carved out a relationship with him that where her cooperation was motivated by fear, not love. So she continues, I told my friend lately that I've been saying no thanks a lot more. Cheerfully, of course. She wasn't saying no up yours, just no, thank you. I'd prefer not to. I tell Fred that my saying no is not a criticism of him or his family and friends. It's just a statement about me, that I'm not loving enough to be able to do all of the family and social stuff nonstop, which is what he had previously been demanding, which is really brilliant on her part. Offer what you can offer, and then saying no isn't a defiance. It's not no, it's just no, I choose not to do that, or actually more accurately, I don't choose to do that. I'm not making the choice to offer that. She says, as I get filled up, I'm finding, in fact, that I'm gradually able to do more things with him. When we feel obligated to do things, we actually wear out sooner and become irritated quicker. Whereas when we're offering what we want to unconditionally, we find that we have more to give. Then we're genuinely being loving instead of simply being dutiful. Dutiful isn't nearly as fun as being loving is. Some partners, in fact, when their partners are first learning about real love, will say that their partners are less loving as a result of real love. Well, it would look like that because their partners give them less. What their partners are is simply less cooperative in imitation love trading. So they're not really less loving. They're just less dutiful. They're less, they cooperate less out of obligation. And to them, that looks like less loving. Well, it wasn't loving in the first place. So pretty smart observations on the part of this person. So we had a good first question. Anybody has any others don't hesitate, because we don't have a lot of saved up ones. Let's see. Here's one from a woman who actually sent her question into a coach. So the coach is describing this woman. Actually, he's describing the woman and her partner. He demands sex from her only at night, even when she is tired from work, rather than accepting the gift she offers of sex in the morning when she's feeling rested. So he doesn't really care what she offers. He demands what he wants. And they make meager, if any, efforts to talk about it. He just says, I want what I want, and I don't care what you offer. So it's really not about love, it's about what he wants. He tells her that it's her marital and, this is a favorite, her scriptural, her spiritual responsibility to satisfy his needs. That's always a real favorite of mine when men, and men do it more often than women do by about 100 to 1, but when men tell their wives that God tells them that it's their duty to satisfy them sexually, that's a heavy burden to bear. Dear, God tells you that it's your duty to have sex with me. I'm sure that makes sex all the more fun for the wives. And then when he sulks and pouts about what he's not getting, then he pays. So if she doesn't respond immediately to what he wants sexually, then he pays more attention to younger women at church. That makes lots of sense. And admits that he does it as a way to hurt his wife's feelings as a punishment. So you can imagine how much more that would endear his wife to him sexually, how much more she would want to have sex with him when, if she doesn't, he then goes and flirts with, or at least looks at, other women in a sexual way, and does it at church. So you can see how crazy-making this would be, yeah? And how completely contrary to a loving experience this would be for her. I mean, gee whiz, this would make her where she wouldn't want to have anything to do with him sexually at all. He begins to lecture and deny her pleadings when, for example, she literally begs for a hug. So he'll demand sex from her, but he won't give her a hug, especially when she's experiencing PMS, which for some women is just crippling, just disabling. I'll tell you, that's an amazingly disparate experience for some women. Some women, you talk about PMS, and they look at you like, what are you talking about? Some women just don't have it. They don't. They don't know what you're talking about. Having now spoken with hundreds of women about that subject. And other women are just rendered insane during those few days. So it's amazing how different that experience is for women. And some of those women have really never had an intelligent conversation about their PMS with either another woman or anybody. Amazing how alone they can be on that subject. He is overly concerned with appearing younger than his actual middle age. Now, there's only one reason that a guy walks around trying to look younger than his middle age, when he's also not concerned about attending to his wife's needs. What reason is that? So that other women will look at him, which, can't be very assuring for his wife. Still talking about him. He won't meet with the wife's coach because he can't stand the thought that anybody would know about their marital problems, which, only makes sense. It would be easy to criticize him for this, but we also have to understand that, look at the whole description of this guy. The whole description of this guy up to this point is all about him, and him. So it's all about imitation love, and he's all concerned about what he's getting. And so naturally, a guy who lives like this would be terrified, all about how he looks, would be terrified that anybody would know that his life was not all put together and wasn't perfect. So, rather than be critical of him, what it does is gives you actually more compassion for him. The whole package is the same from top to bottom. He's afraid. He's empty. So don't be critical of him. Understand him. And, of course, he's made no effort to learn about real love. Well, gee, why would he? He's never seen any. All he's ever known is imitation love and, the brief experience on the trading floor of imitation love. And then along comes somebody and says to him, the only way you've ever lived your life, trading imitation love, that's all wrong. So everything you've done in your life, that's bad. There's another way to live, and it's called real love, and so you'd have to learn how to live your life all over again. Gee, I wonder why he wouldn't be interested in that. So pretty understandable why he wouldn't, although naturally he has a reason to learn about real love, which is that he's miserable, and his wife's miserable, and his marriage is terrible, and it doesn't mention children, but you can imagine, goodness, if there are children here, yuck, they would just be very unhappy too. They couldn't be happy. It would be impossible. So then the coach talks about her. She's reading Real Love and has been regularly attending the group. She's been to a couple of Real Love events, makes her calls, mostly to her coach, would like to call me, and that's fine. They can arrange to do that later. Realizes that she's more of a victim when she's PMSing than when she's not. Well, yeah. It's like saying you feel like more of a victim when somebody's pounding your thumb with a hammer than when you're not. Yeah, I bet she is. And see, the fact that she simply realizes that she's more of a victim, that's good, delightful. It's an indication that she's willing to tell the truth about herself, is what it means. She realizes that her husband also feels unloved. Now, see, that's really sweet. Instead of just saying, my husband is an unredeemable SOB, my husband feels unloved. That's why he acts like this. Especially now, see, this shows really real insight. Especially now that he's not getting the imitation love that he believes he's entitled to have. That shows some real insight, because their entire relationship began and has thus far been sustained on the premise of imitation love. And along comes this woman and says, we're going to change the rules. Well, what do you think his response is going to be to, we're going to change the rules? Oh, he's thinking, no, we're not. We're not going to change the rules, because he likes things the way they are. He's in control. He's in charge. He gets to dictate the way things go. And she says, we're going to change the rules. And he's, no, we're not. Understandable that he would. Even though, and I know it's insane, but that's what imitation love is insane. Even though he's not happy. But if you've never seen real love and somebody says, give up what you've got for what you've never seen, why would you do that? You'd have to have initially a huge faith in the beginning. And yeah, it's hard for people to start off. And so the question is, what more can she do to feel more loved and less concerned with his unloving behaviors? It's really tough to tell her this in the beginning, but the only thing she can really change is her. So she has to spend all the time that she can. We've seen so many examples of people doing this, is her. She needs to spend as much time as she can on conference calls, attending groups, spending time with people and getting all the love she can, and then loving him as much as she chooses to. And then when he comes along and says, oh, well, and I want twice that much, then in a loving way she says, oh, I understand that, and that's all I have for today. How many times have I been on the phone with somebody or in person with somebody and said, well, so it's been good talking to you, and now I'm leaving. And people will say, well, I just want a few more minutes. I know, and I'm leaving because I'm done. That's how much time, or that's how much effort, or that's how much love, or whatever you want to call it, that's how much I choose to give. And if you want more, I get it, but you'll have to choose to get it from somewhere else. Just because somebody demands something from you, and just because somebody needs it a whole lot, doesn't mean you are responsible to give it to them. Even if you are their mother, father, husband, wife, whoever. Because if you keep trying to give past the point where you've got it, you're going to make it worse. Because then you'll be filled with resentment and so on. It just gets terrible. So that's what she's got to do, and she needs the support of people who are there beside her saying, it's okay to say, no, I'm done. And the sooner you say, no, I'm done, the easier it is to say it in a loving way instead of waiting until you're impatient and you get to the hell no, I'm done. Now it's not loving, see? John says, I used to live by the 7 habits of highly effective people. The emotional bank account was used all the time. I make deposits into your emotional bank account, and then I can make withdrawals without overdrawing on the account and being penalized. Most of all, when I make deposits, you were required to like me because I was filling your emotional bank account with happiness, mostly materialistic things. This led to walking around giving people as much as I could all the time while expecting to be able to take withdrawals from them whenever I wanted to. This was a train wreck waiting to happen, and I was clueless about it. Without real love in my life, I would still be following this path. You know, I read the 7 habits a long time ago, and I'd kind of forgotten about that metaphor, about the bank account, but I went back and read it years later, and the implications of it are scary. Talking about how you can withdraw, it's easier to withdraw from somebody if you have made a deposit in their account. Wow. Well, what a clear description of trading that is. If I make a deposit in your account, then I can come back and withdraw from your account. Wow. That's trading imitation love. And it may not have been the intent of the author to describe it in that way. It may not have been. So I have no criticism of the author, but that's how it comes across. And those are the words that are used. So the idea is not to do that. The idea is to get my emotional bank account filled up from wherever, so that I always have enough, so that when other people withdraw from my bank account, for whatever reason, or that withdrawals are made even by things like bad weather, sickness, waiting in traffic, whatever the reason, I don't get completely empty and drained and start shooting people, emotionally or literally. It's to get our accounts filled up so that they're full all the time. That sure works better. And to never focus on who fills up my account. That's probably the biggest single reason that we screw up relationships, is when I tell you that you need to make a deposit now, today, and it's got to be you. No, it really doesn't. John continues, I find myself still in the hole of being indifferent to people. I'm worried that if I start to give things and start making people happy again, that I will just be getting on the train of imitation love. So I'm left being quiet and appearing indifferent. I need to get out of this space sometime. John says, let me add that this space is a very peaceful place for me. I'm happy here, but I think I may be avoiding loving others. You know, you're not in such a terrible place. For a while, getting out of the place of trading imitation love is such a huge step that if you can just be in that peaceful place for a while, hallelujah, bless your heart. Then, bit by bit, if you can start loving other people and see you already are, you're doing it with your son. And he's in the delightful place of being so young that he doesn't have a whole lot to give you back. So it's really a great place to be. Then, bit by bit, you can start doing it with other people. I have the opportunity I get to do this with people all the time. So people come to me all the time saying, fill me up. I get to do it so often that I can't even remember who I've spent time with. Or I can't even remember the last person who said, please fill me up. So you get to where you don't expect anything in return because you can't remember who it last was. You'll be able to do the same thing. You really will. And you can experiment with that. And I would actually suggest the experiment that you pick somebody at work, that you pick a friend, that you somebody, and you simply, with a smile, with a question, with a whatever, you pay close attention to what they need in the moment. You do it with a clerk in the checkout line. I do this sometimes when we're just at the store. You walk in the store and you say, you know, I came to pick up pretzels. Instead, I get a vision of loveliness. I wasn't anticipating this. I do that kind of thing as I travel, as I go to the store. I do that kind of thing pretty often. And the response you get is a real tickle. And it can't be the same, you can't use the same approach to everybody. You have to look at the person you're talking to. It's a different approach for an outgoing guy clerk than it would be for a shy, little, withdrawn, mousy female clerk. I would tend to use the vision of loveliness thing for a woman who I thought was not sure of her appearance. But I'll just light her up. You might just make a comment about, for example, an outgoing guy clerk, about how quickly he helped you and about his competence. He would really enjoy that. Let me tell you, they'll remember you the next time you're there. Little things. Look at them. Pay attention to them. Look into their eyes. Speak to them by name. You can do this at work. You can do this in a line when you're buying something in a store. You can do it with a friend. Just pay attention to the difference that it makes. And then dismiss it. You want nothing back. Pay attention to, are you looking for gratitude? Are you looking for some kind of response for the person? Some sort of little, yeah, I really appreciated that. Because if you are, then you're looking for a trade of imitation love. And if you are looking for some sort of trade, just note it. You don't need to go, oh man, I'm a loser, I was expecting something in return. No. You just kind of note to yourself, I'll be darned, I was looking for about a 20% return there. So what? If it was a 40% return, then over time you notice that that your expectations were falling with time. It's all information. So what you're saying here is really common. Just notice it. Pay attention to it. Gather information about it. We get to practice loving everywhere we go. Linda says, one of the members of my Real Love class has, Linda's teaching a class, by the way, in Real Love, which is just very cool. You want to learn something? Teach a class. A habit of almost every work saying something like, boy, do I know some people who could really use this class. Who doesn't? Last night, another member spouted the same sentiment. What would you suggest as a loving and teaching response? I've said things like, well, you know, it wouldn't do any good if they came and weren't open to doing something differently. Is there a way to guide them toward not focusing on others, but rather on their own need for the class? By the way, we've viewed the first half of Module 4, and some of them are just beginning to see a glimmer of what real love might require of them. Yes. These two members don't seem to be in that group. Yeah, good. All right, so when somebody says, boy, do I know some people who could really use this class, the first loving thing to do is to never change the subject, but to listen to what they just said. So, really listening to what they just said rather than planning ahead, because we tend to do that. We tend to go, well, like you said here, well, you know, it wouldn't do any good if they came and weren't opening to something differently. True, but it's not quite listening to what they just said. So what did they just say? I know some people who could use this class. So follow what they just said. Say, so describe one of those people. Use what they just said as a teaching moment for your class. Say, describe one of those people. And let them take a moment to describe one of those people and say, describe one of those people in light of what we just talked about, say, last week or this week, or, you know, some getting and protecting. Tie it into what you just talked about. Describe one of those people's behaviors that makes you say that. So, an angry person. So they describe a friend of theirs, a neighbor, a sister, or whatever, who gets angry about blah, 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 blah. And then, if you want to take it a step further, say, is there any part of your life or any behavior of yours that has any similarity to theirs? Poof, you've got them. And if they can't come up with an answer, that's okay, because some people can't do that. Early on, there's some people that just can't do the I'm like that. Somebody else in the class will be able to. And now, just like that, you've moved on with your lesson into the subject you were going to talk about. So, piece of cake. But it gives them an opportunity to tell the truth about themselves. And you did it while listening to them. So, easy. Susan says, I have a husband who really hates doing his income tax. Does anybody have a husband who likes doing his income tax? If so, let me know and I'll have him do mine. He's been behind in doing them almost our whole marriage of 31 years, which of course makes the doing them all the worse. At this point, he's working on 2005 and 2006 and of course 2007. Oh gosh, that just makes life miserable. His biggest problem is disorganization, possibly a little procrastination too. He never knows where anything is because his computer room is a mess. I feel terrible for him. So he puts it off, and then now he doesn't know where anything is, which makes it worse. Yeah, I know. I've helped him clean it many times, but every time I do, he just messes it up again. which should teach you something about helping him to clean it up. He will not have it done by others, the taxes, tried that. So my question is, how much do I help him? When I am helping, when am I helping and when am I enabling him? Of course, this efforts me because I have to sign it too. I'm no good at doing it. Neither would he ever let me. Remember, he will not even let a professional do it. He wants me to help him find certain papers or help him clean up the room with him. I do better alone. I know he's uptight and overwhelmed, but I get that way myself when I try to work with him. What do you think? Oh, this is just a really hard subject. But I've done this with a bunch of couples. So here's the deal. I'm assuming that you do finances jointly, that if he puts it off, that there are penalties involved. Unless he's living in another country than the United States, the longer you put off doing taxes, the more you pay penalties on not paying them. That's true in the United States. And so if it's costing him, it's costing you. So I would sit down with him, because I've done this with other couples, and say, and ask him to show you what this is costing you in penalties. And if he says, well, I don't want to talk about it, you say, I understand that, and I love you to death, but this is something that we simply have to talk about. And I will sit here with you until you feel comfortable, as in I'll sit here with you all night, or we can come back and talk about it tomorrow. But we do have to talk about it because it's costing us money. It's not just costing you money, it's costing both of us money. And so it's not a decision that you get to make on your own. If this were, for example, what you were going to eat and you wanted to gain weight on your own, fine. But this is affecting both of us. This is our finances. So we need to talk about what we need to do to get all of the taxes done all the way up through 2007, and to have it done by, I'm sure that he's filed an extension, but you need to decide on a date. You need to say, so what would be reasonable? Could we have all the taxes done for all of 2007? Could we have it done by, say, May 30th? Which you probably could. All it would require is that you sat down and simply did it. So pick a date like that, which is not unreasonable, by the way. Not at all. I mean, these are personal taxes. This isn't IBM. Pick a date. He files for a tax extension. He's already done that for past years, I'm sure. And say, so what is it? How can I help you? What can be done? And if he simply freezes up, then you say, so it's like this. We can come up with a plan, or I will come up with a plan. Because my money is involved, we will come up with a plan. And if he just sputters and fumes, and it has to be a timed plan. So we will have all the taxes done by May 30th. We'll have 2005's done by, and you time it out, by May 1st. We'll have 2006's done by May 15th. Well, and if he's not on schedule, you say, if we don't have 2005's done by May 1st, then I will take over with my plan. And you can do whatever you choose. But people like this who are that paralyzed sometimes need to have somebody take over. They do. One potential plan would be, for example, that, like you said, his room is a mess. He's already proved that he can't do the taxes. He's proved that. He can't do it on time, and it's costing you penalties. You need to find out what the penalties are. And if necessary, what you can do is, in a really gentle, non-threatening way, you can say, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the room and I'm going to take out of your study every single paper that has anything to do with finances. Anything. CPAs are used to this. So it may be threatening to him, but it won't be scary to a CPA. And after the tax season is over, you can find a CPA who will be willing to do this. It will be more expensive, but that's up to your husband. He doesn't want to do it. You'll go into the room, and you'll take only every piece of paper that has to do with money. And then you take all the pieces of paper and you put them in boxes. This is going to eliminate the stress in your family. It will, whatever it takes. And you take all these boxes and you take them down to a CPA and you say, here are the boxes. And they have assistants that are used to going through boxes and sorting it all out and doing people's taxes. That's what they do. So you tell him, you can do it that way. That's one way to do it. Now, you just gave me some information. You said, the government has always owed us so far. So if there are no penalties involved, which may be possible, if there are no penalties involved, maybe you don't care. You have to decide what matters. But you need to first be sure that there are no penalties. If they're none involved and he's simply getting behind and it's not costing you, maybe it's not worth laying down the law like this. You've got to figure it out. But you've got to decide what it's costing you in terms of money, what it's costing you in terms of stress. But if it is costing you in terms of money and stress, you get to make a decision like, we're going to go in there and take all of the pieces of paper, and I'm going to take it down to the CPA and have it done with. But you've got to decide what you're willing to pay in terms of getting it done. But fussing about it is a dumb choice. You either solve the problem or you don't. Making sense? Now, sure, somebody had a question. It says, someone in our group has been doing Real Love in their Real Love group for 5 years. Before that, he and his wife followed a different program. The program taught that you should share your feelings in a neutral way directly with the people in your life. So the program taught that if you were mad at your wife, you should go to your wife and say, in a neutral way, I just wanted to let you know that I'm angry at you. And I've known a lot of different programs that, advocate that. I just wanted you to know that I'm angry at you, and, I don't have expectations around that, which I think is absolutely insane. How can you possibly tell somebody in a non-emotional way that you're angry at them? I just have not seen that work out. When you go and tell somebody that you're angry at them, there is an emotional impact with that. And which is why we advocate sharing your anger with a loving wise man or wise woman first, working it out with them, and then bringing back to your partner whatever love you've got. Now, occasionally in a really mature relationship, you can share with your partner that you're angry and work it out. Occasionally that can happen, but that works out so rarely that unless you're really experienced with real love, your odds of doing that are slim. And I've had people say to me, well, but isn't it worth a try? Well, I suppose it's kind of like the odds of taking a revolver and spinning the chamber and pointing it at your partner and hoping that a flower will come out. So, yeah, you can give it a shot. Literally. So she continues that this woman is resentful, this woman who had done it this other way is resentful of his time at the Real Love group, making calls to other people, and feels that the group takes away from their relationship, and that he is withholding his feelings from her while he's sharing them with others. So what she wants to know is what my thoughts are on this. And, in a way, she's right, because he's sharing his emotions and his feelings with others, and she's not getting as much of him. And so he can help her resentment a lot by, instead of sharing with her his negative feelings, instead of doing the confrontations that he used to do with her as the old program advocated, instead of doing that, he needs to continue to do sharing his anger and so on with real love people. He needs to keep doing that. He now needs to more consciously attend to sharing his positive experiences with her. If necessary, actually write down that he's doing it, or he'll forget. And share with her things that he's learning in real love, like his gratitude, like his understanding of things that he's learning, like about his selfishness, like telling the truth about his anger perhaps at other people, you see? So he can share with her just as much as he ever did. It's just that he's not sharing with her directly things like his anger at her, which tends to lead to negative interactions. So his mistake is that he's just not sharing as much time and emotion and content with her, but he doesn't have to share with her the negative stuff. She's just feeling left out, that's all. She's jealous, which is understandable. So here's more of the story from the guy who fills out the taxes. She's saying the government the government owes them back taxes, and he's letting the government keep the year before money so as not to have a fine. So the government owes them something like $27,000. So it's up to you, honey. It's up to you how much fuss you're willing. It's always about risk-benefit, because it's your money too. And you know, the government, when they keep your money, you're losing investment. You're losing investment opportunities. You're losing return on your investment. So you've got to decide, are you willing to sit down with him and at least discuss with him the possibility of taking over the taxes from him from now on? I mean, clearly he's not enjoying this job. He's making this painfully clear to you. All he'd have to be willing to do from now on is take everything having to do with money and just dropping it in a box in one place. At the end of the year, there are CPAs only too happy because you wouldn't have to pay the full CPA fee per hour. They have assistants who take all of this stuff and they put it into the right piles, and then they give it to the CPA who does your taxes. You find a good CPA who does this, and he doesn't have to mess with anything. Your husband doesn't. And he'd only have to deal with the initial pain of having both of you go through his entire study and ferreting out every piece of paper that has to do with money one time. My guess is you could do this within 2 or 3 days. I'm sure it looks like a rat hole, but you just go through the papers and go, money box, money box, money box, money box, and then when you're done, at some point, you go through the money box and then ferret out which goes. You wouldn't even have to go which goes in which year. The CPA will do it for you. And then you don't have this fuss anymore. And you don't have the stress and the tension. Try it. Sit down with him and say, why do we keep living with this? We have $27,000 we could be using and investing. I'll give you till May 15th, and then I'm just going to go in and do it. And he says, no, you're not. Well, you know, it's my money too. I'm going to do it. So if you leave the house, I'm going to do it for you. You decide whether you're willing to do that or not. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just saying, if you haven't considered that option, that's an option. And I've recommended that to couples before who have done it. And then the partner who has lived in this constant state of anxiety has in the end gone, thank you for taking this off my hands, and has been glad that it's been taken off their hands. But see, I don't know your husband. I don't know whether it would be worth it for you to finally just take it off his hand. I can't answer that for you. I'm just describing another option. That's all. Oh, the Pleasanton group was saying, regarding the tax question, how is this different from other mistakes that our partner makes, and our partner's mistakes are none of our business? Normally, the mistakes that our partner makes are not our business. In this case, her partner is making mistakes with her money. And this is directly her business. Like, he's spending or not spending or wasting her money. It's like taking her dollar bills and he's tearing them up. So it really clearly is her business. He's investing or not investing her money. So it really is quite a different thing. It's not normally we're talking about somebody making emotional mistakes or being stupid or being angry or whatever, and it isn't our business. No, he's wasting her money. And notice again, we're not advocating that she tell him to be responsible, that she tell him that he's being stupid, no, she's just saying, we need to solve this problem. It's just a problem. Kind of like getting lost on the road and saying, okay, now we're going to get back on the road. We're just going to solve this problem. That's all. Maria says, I realized this week that for the 2 years of real love, I am mostly working on recognition and reduction of the trading of imitation love and use of getting and protecting behaviors. It seems like I am still recovering from the exhaustion of living that way all my life. And I can relate to John's comment. I too look at the Real Love Pearl card on loving acts and would like to be doing more of them, but I just don't seem to be able to at this time. That's okay. I'm in school to get independent of children and former husband, and much of the time studying to get A's, like in the classes she's taking, so I can get into the impacted medical field. It's all I can do to be loving many days. I think I do a lot of those little things, but I guess in contrast to my lifelong dream of wanting to be Mother Teresa, it seems less exciting. Yeah, bit by bit. We all learn gradually. What's the rush? You spent a lifetime of not knowing that real love even existed. And now you're learning to trade in imitation love less and less. And simply being able to identify it and to quit using it is huge. So now moving over to consciously choosing to unconditionally love people, that's another step. And we spend the entire rest of our lives at getting better at that. So, gee whiz, sweetie, I think that's great. Just no great big hurry. Angela's, and we're always in a big hurry to be perfect, aren't we? Angela's going to talk here about being perfect too. She says, I wish that I, who she really is, could come to Atlanta and leave my body at home because I'm so overweight. I don't like the way I look, but I don't eat healthy. I'm sitting here looking at how good you look. That's hysterical. I'll tell you one reason that I've lost, like 60 pounds now, and the only reason is television. I've never met an all-you-can-eat buffet I didn't like. Bring on the all-you-can-eat ribs, honey. I do it for television audience, and that's embarrassing, but there you go. I quit eating and started exercising because of that. I'd rather eat. But I recognize that in disseminating the real love message, there's a way there is an appearance you have to maintain, because there's something. I couldn't have people turning on the television and wondering if they were watching the Discovery Channel and a special for large sea mammals. So that was it. It's the only reason. So don't get all complimentary. It was for that reason only. She says, I feel like running. Shame upon it. I do run, actually. I don't shop for clothes often because I don't like how I look. I don't feel attractive and run from compliments. I stay at my desk as much as possible, and so forth and so on. The point is, I run. I make attempts at exercise, but I'm not consistent. You know, I'm going to tell you what I told Maria, sweetie. After a lifetime of pain, and, you know, I know your story better than most people do, but gosh, kid, I mean, look at how you were raised. So you were raised in a more unloving environment than most people will ever imagine. Many people have died as a result, literally died, as a result of being raised like you were raised, or ended up in prison. But prison or death has been a common result of the way you were raised. And yet you're still alive. And you've raised children who have ended up doing, way better than you've done, despite some of their screw-ups, I know, but way better than you've done, directly as a result of what you've taught them. So one of the ways you've compensated is by eating, the same way I've done on many occasions. So you've got some things you could improve on. You know, pretty much shut up. You've made such a success of your life, considering where you started. And I got to tell you, I got to tell myself the same thing. Because I look at myself sometimes in the mirror, in the spiritual mirror, and go, you're such a loser. You've caused so much harm in the world. You've hurt so many people. I still do that. And I need to go, shut up. We need to remember where we came from. We need to remember what we were taught, and then look at what we've learned and where we're headed. So I got nothing but admiration for you, sweetie, so keep it up. And I got to say that to all of you. Look at all of you who are here. All we can do is learn. All we can do is love from where we are right now. And that's what you're doing. So I admire you, I love you, and I look forward to seeing all of you a week from today. And until then, we love you tons. See you then.